It always takes a
It's
second.
going. We are. Good evening, everybody. We are live, and we thank you for coming in. This is the A to Z program. My name is Eric Zant, hence the A to Z. And tonight on the program, we have a very, very special guest. I am honored and thrilled to have the one and the only Deanna Zant. She's here tonight. Deanna, say hello to everybody.
What is up, y'all? What is up, A2Z?
This is great. This has been a long time coming, isn't it?
I mean, a really long time coming. You have been my personal bodyguard for how many years now? I mean, it's about time that we did a show together.
Yeah, we got somehow it has to conglomerate into, something a little more, tangible than
just
violent.
Yeah.
I absolutely abhor, but
I mean, as a former pro wrestler, I would imagine that, that's how that rolls.
It does. It's just, it's one of those youthful things that I didn't think would come true. And when it did, the softer side of me realized, well, I don't know. I don't like walking around sore. So
yeah, there's that.
Now
someday I really do want to hear. I don't actually know the kind of detailed trajectory of how you went into that career. I mean, I knew that it was a dream, and then it just sort of happened, and we were all like, huh. Anyway.
Yeah. But, I'll have to divulge into that someday. Actually, we're probably going to do it sometime on the other podcast that I do. But a lot of people. I just never. After I stopped, I just never talked about it much.
Yeah.
But, that just never happened. But anyway, we are here to talk to you and about you. So Deanna, you live in New York City. Let's get that right out. New York City, the happening place, which I love. Everybody knows I love to visit. But Deanna, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what kind of brought you to New York and what you got involved in since you've been there. So give us some backstory.
It's funny because, where we grew up, New York City isn't the most popular place. A lot of people, people are like, I remember when I said I was moving here, one of our neighbors literally just looked at me and dead serious, not giving me a hard time at all, was like, why? And I was like, jobs? I don't know, I've been here 20 years, 22 actually this year, which is kind of insane. I've been in this apartment here in Brooklyn and for 12 years. I used to live in the Lower East Side. But coming here actually was completely not my plan at all. I was also not a fan of the city. Growing up, I drank I don't want to say drank the Kool-Aid because it's kind of made me. It's kind of, but
that connotation's gotten out of hand now.
But it didn't appeal to me at all. And then I was actually supposed to. I graduated college from Albany, and I was supposed to go to Berkeley to go to grad school. And at the last minute, I freaked out and decided I was like, I don't think that's what I want to do. And I had a boyfriend at the time who very romantically said to me, "Oh, you could move to New York with me if you want." I know.
Whoa, that's some heavy game right there.
That's
heavy game.
That's like pickup artist level.
Oh,
how to win a girl's heart.
Oh,
yeah. Anyway, but I didn't know what else to do, and so I did. And my plan was originally I was going to stay here 2 years and then try to figure out what I was going to do about grad school. I was going for linguistics. I was going to get my PhD in linguistics, and 22 years later, I'm still here and don't have a PhD. So,
but you're having a lot of fun, and you've made a lot of strides in a lot of the organizations and causes that you take part in, and from what I've seen throughout the past decade or so, I mean, you've really inspired a lot of people, and you've brought a lot of attention to issues that you truly believe very strongly in, and I think that itself, to me, it means more than a PhD. Am I wrong or am I right?
Is that rhetorical? No, you're right. Absolutely. I mean, that was actually one of the reasons why I ditched the PhD at the last minute. I had gone to a conference and people presented all of these papers around like language and social issues, which is what I was interested in, social justice issues. And I was like, this is amazing and fascinating, and I love this. Okay, so what do we do about it? And they were just kind of like, we're academics. We just study this and then like give it to people, and hopefully somebody does something.
Right.
And that was actually the piece for me that I was like, oh, I'm kind of a doer, and I don't think good. I don't think real good. So yeah, so that was a big part of it. And then when I moved here, I was pretty lost, young person, but it was the height of the .com, and so I got .com jobs. And
wow.
Yeah,
what a time
to be alive.
Yeah.
Then 9/11 happened, and I got laid off, and that began another round of just like, who am I? What am I? I'd started working for the first company that I'd worked for here. I'd gone back to work for them, which was Deutsche Telekom, because we are German, and this is what we do in our family. We find phone companies and we work for them.
Yeah, that's for for those that don't know the inside. I think how many? At least
I think six
work for telecommunications phone companies. And we are German. We're all from Germany. Our parents.
We're talking about our dads and uncles. Like
dads and uncles,
out of the 12 kids, I think 6 of them have worked for telecom.
Yeah.
My brother still works for telecom. My brother builds cell phone towers and construction sites for telecommunications in the South. So
yeah, and can I say, huge brains in all these guys. Even your brother, huge, gigantic. I mean, this is brain power that I can't even describe. Like, and as everyone knows, it's apparent that I didn't get it. So that's why I'm here doing this. That's why they did that. So
I feel the same way. There's times where I'm like our Uncle Ernie used to love sharing limericks that were like quantum physics limericks, and I was just like, sure.
Who the hell does that?
All right, nerd family, rock on.
Yeah,
or I should say nerd family.
Yeah, like giant nerd. Like, he used to like give me these like quizzical, like rhymey things like you're talking about, and I'd be looking at this guy and going like, wow, man, like I just want a soda. Like, can you move? Yeah. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Holy shit. But that was I guess that was the charm of all those, like all those cool family reunions we had, and like you said, all our men. But that's cool that you got into that. So 9/11, we're at 9/11. You
and then I came back, went back to telecom, and then after a few years of that, it was actually it was when the Iraq War was starting, and even I think it must be clear to the PCP crew here that I am an extreme lefty. I was not about that war.
No. Yeah,
living in New York, I lived downtown during it. I was, I'm in the World Trade Center health program because of the lung stuff. Anyway, so I started, I've always been really politically engaged, much to my dad's chagrin. I think at one point I remember being like 10 years old and just being mad about money. And being like, why do we even have money? Why can't people just eat if they're hungry? And my dad being like,
oh yeah, I mean, his probably his golf cap exploded.
Oh yeah, and good like working class dudes that we come from were like, because you got to work for it, and I'm like, I don't understand.
Yeah,
anyway,
why?
I'm looking at some of the comments too. Yes, we do all have large hands. Check that out. We do have large hands.
Yes, Deanna, for a woman, you have big hands.
I have big.
I got the Zant hand. Like, I have abnormally large hands. My father, I think, had believe it or not, I think he had the biggest.
Yeah.
And our grandfather, from what I'm told, had even bigger hands yet for a smaller
Uncle
man.
Charlie did too, because I remember Uncle Charlie would sit there and smoke cigarettes, and like he just had these. I just remember he had these enormously long fingers, and he would sit there like this, and he would smoke cigarettes. Anyway, so that's all to say. During 2003 and 4, I really wanted to.
Steve's admiring the game, Deanna. Steve's admiring the game.
I'm with you, Steve. I'm with you. Mike says idiot hands. Yeah, and then I really wanted to be a full-time activist. I wanted to be in the world making change and figuring out how that happens. And I wanted to be a writer, and I was doing poetry at the time, and I was doing a bunch of things. And so I quit my last full-time regular job in 2004 and started consulting with no plan. Zero plan. Nope.
You have, yeah, not to cut you off, but you have like fans already here. Here we have a good friend of mine, RD. He was a former mayor, and
I know.
And he was a former mayor.
I never met you, RD, but I know who you are because deposit for life, man. Even though I didn't grow up there, I feel real affinity.
Yeah, you two would really have a kindred spirit. And Steve, of course, the logical one. See what happens when you leave deposit.
Yeah. And, I mean, miracle of miracles. But yeah, and that was one of the interesting things about moving to New York too, was that once I got here and kind of like once I got in the lane of things, like I had lived in Europe before and come back from that. And I started to realize, I'm like, oh, this is like a foreign country. Like I have to treat this like a foreign country.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden everything made sense to me. And then I started figuring out that everything I ever loved, like punk rock, Madonna, all this stuff came from here.
Yeah, at the epicenter of it. Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, then I started becoming activist in technology stuff. And the rest is a little bit history. I mean, it's been kind of a wild ride. I'm happy to talk about any and all parts of it, but I can talk forever. So I'll just let you ask the question.
I would have never, I would have never have guessed that. But you've spurred a very. We have a lot of people on right now. We have a lot of people watching, so we're gonna say hello, Abigail. Abigail actually, her father owns the store I work for, so we're gonna say hello to Abigail.
Yes, big.
And Luke Tucker, who grew up with the Zants, he knows about the whole Zant deal. Brains and hands are
huge brains and huge hands, man. I know who Luke Tucker is. It's so funny because I'm like deposit adjacent. Like I know who everybody is, but like I wasn't there. And I feel sometimes kind of sad about that.
You could, but you don't have to. I mean, it was Mayberry-ish, but like after a while, like when you get into your teens and you're like young and you're angry,
yeah,
like all there really is to do is like drink beer and like drive around back roads all night long, which is fun, which is really fun.
For the Binghamtonites, I'm from Hillcrest, and so like Port Crane, Shenango Bridge, Shenango Valley, Shenango Forks, like not very different that way. That's all people did where I grew up too.
Basically the same. Yeah, basically the same. It kind of parallels because that's the outskirts of the
we're the last area. We're the last suburb before the farms start going like out to like when you leave us, you go to like Port Crane and like all those Mike Zant.
Oh, they're not going up on the screen. Not all of them, Mike. Not all of
them. But I can see them. No, but and that was actually, where we grew up and like the kind of people that we come from was actually like a lot of inspiration for my activism too, because I feel like working class people in America, especially that aren't in big cities, especially that are, living the rural dream, are really forgotten in a lot of ways and really looked over, really taken for granted by both sides, that they will be on their side without having to do anything for them. And so a lot of that, I was like, and that's actually the longest client that I've had is I've been working for Jim Hightower.
Jim Hightower.
Texas.
Jim Hightower. Tell everybody quick about Jim Hightower and his show before you go into that.
Jim Hightower, former Texas Agriculture Commissioner, America's #1 populist. I've been working for him for 15 years, and we do a Tuesday night show. We actually have a show next week on Facebook Live here, facebook.com/Jim Hightower, and we're going to be talking to Senator Sherrod Brown of Ohio about about these issues, about the future of rural America. And
whoa, that'd be interesting. I'm going to tune into that.
Yeah, I think it's really up our alley, and it's something. So I started reading Hightower when I was in college, and I was like, oh, this is a dude who gets it. Like, he understands that you can have progressive ideas about wanting to take care of your community, wanting to be part of something bigger, and kind of all of these things that I really believe in, that I grew up on. I grew up Christian, and so that was a really big part of our value system, is like everybody pitches in and helps out everybody else. So I started reading him, and then I started working for him like 15 years ago, and that's no, not the guy from Police Academy. We get that all the time. Not that guy. Different Hightower.
No, different Hightower. He's a little shorter than the Hightower that we know, RD, but that's a good point.
Close. Anyway, but like, to really dig into that stuff. And I mean, lots of things about that, especially which are finally starting to come to light too, is like this idea that rural America is all white, for example. And like, it's this taken for granted thing. And it's like, most of rural America is white, black, and brown. And
very much so. Very much so.
So anyway, so it's like all of those things together. Like that's how where we grew up, like, really brought me in. And I used to get into arguments about fracking with a bunch of my activist friends, because, they would be treating people upstate with the fracking issue like, oh, the hicks don't know what they're doing. What are you
guys talking about? Oh.
And I'm like, hey, we know exactly what we're talking about. We're trying to put food on our tables. And we haven't been able to do that in 40 years because of the decimation of the economy here. And on top of that, what's your plan for us if that's not the answer? Like, yeah, what's your plan? Like, what can you offer us? So I would get I would get into a lot of fights about fracking upstate, because I'm not pro fracking myself, but when it came to the human issues and the human components of it, like, we all know, like, you and I both, everybody here, I'm sure in this chat knows people who really have suffered in upstate New York, and activists don't care. They don't care. They just want their houses in the Catskills,
Yeah, that's and you brought up a good point, because I think the real idea of what, like you said, activists, they kind of don't see the forest for the tree. Yeah. They lose sight sometimes of the actual issue at hand. Like, okay, that is a bad idea. Maybe, like, okay, there are definitely a lot of cons to fracking, but again, in that think tank, maybe instead of like, trying to, get all on top of everybody about it, maybe come up with something else where they can generate something.
Yeah. And so I started, and this is something with Hightower's work that's been really interesting for me, is especially in the South and the Southeast, in North Carolina, Georgia, Eastern Tennessee. It's been really interesting. The activists there are very collaborative, where you're not parachuting into a community telling them what's best for them. It's like, mountaintop removal is a huge issue in Appalachia. And, we used to have some cousins and still have some cousins in West Virginia, and, part of the mining communities there. And instead of being people, sending activists from the coasts, people have been building up their own coalitions there and collaborating with the community. Like, what do we actually need? We need good jobs. We need to be able to feed our families. We need, we need healthcare. The mining companies did not take care of people. It's not the EJ, the Endicott Johnson story that we grew up with. That is not how corporations actually work. We got lucky. So yeah. Anyway, I could go on and on. Anyway, but yeah, that's how all of this stuff kind of gelled together. And I burned out really hard a couple of different times. And right now I'm in the middle of, my therapist and I joke around because I'm a good New Yorker. I go to therapy every week. Yeah.
Yeah.
How we roll. You're required here in the 5 boroughs when you sign your lease, you sign a rider that's like, and yes, I will go to therapy every week. That's how we do.
I will see them weekly.
And so anyway, we joke around that I kind of office spaced myself, where I was just like, I'm just not going to do that anymore. Just work other jobs and, have a good life. But still working for Hightower is one of my main political outlet. And, obviously other activist outlets. Anybody that looks at my Facebook is probably, gets it.
Now I want to, speaking of social justice and social media, you wrote a book, correct?
I did.
You did. Now, can you, you got to tell us a little about the book. You got to tell us what it was and is it where to get it? I mean, I'm sure there's people that really would want to read it too. I mean, these, like you said, and to make another quick point, you mentioned that you're very, very far left. A lot of progressive thinking people in our group and a lot of progressive people in the Pop Culture Pros group too. So I think hand in hand, if you appreciate pop culture, you kind of have a broader view of things. You don't.
One thing that I do want to shout out in that context, I want to shout out one of my clients for those that are kind of in this space. There's actually there's a really, really great there's sort of a hybrid foundation coaching research think tank, but it's called Pop Culture Collaborative. And it's all about the changing face of pop culture and looking at, getting away from these kind of mainstream ideas. Like, they did a writer's room and supported a project out of East LA, which was about people reintegrating into mainstream life after having been in prison. And they had people who had been imprisoned as writers, wacky idea versus like trying to, go do an interview. And, it's like, no, let's really go to the source and like, let's really dig in, like a lot of trans issues, a lot of immigrant stories that are just like those stories that we all, I think, can feel and in some way identify with. Anyway, Pop Culture Collaborative, check out some of their work. They are the serious jam. But cool. To your actual question, what?
Yeah, the book. That's great though. Check that out, everybody. Check out what she said. That's cool.
Check out what she said.
Do it.
In one of my many iterations, I actually started when social media started becoming, popular and in mainstream. I saw this incredible moment where everyday people could tell their stories and everyday people could share their experiences and kind of help shape the public conversation versus just being determined by these gatekeepers in the media and, whatever, like how could we all contribute? And so I started doing trainings for progressive organizations on how they could take advantage of social media and, as we called it back in the day, Web 2.0. Remember that?
Remember that? Oh my God.
And then I did this presentation at a publisher and they were like, hey, this would make a great book. And I was like, get the hell out of here. That's insane. And they were like, no, really, write a proposal. And I was like, that sounds like work. It sounds hard.
That doesn't
anyway, it was published in 2010 by Barrett Kohler. It's called Share This, How You Will Change the World with Social Networking. Did not predict a lot of things that would end up happening. Some of the things I got really right on how we would shape public conversations. But as far as like what we're dealing with now with misinformation and, the kind of filter bubbles, my friend Eli Pariser wrote that book about like, we're not actually cross-pollinating conversations anymore because the algorithms have kind of taken over. We're not actually reaching people who don't already agree with us in our social media. Anyway, yeah. And sometimes that's okay. Like sometimes you're there to speak to the choir. Like sometimes you're there for support and like identity and validation, right? Like sometimes you're posting some meme, like even like this happens at PCP all the time, right? Like somebody posts a Star Wars meme and the rest of us who are all like Star Wars nerds are falling over laughing, you know? And because we feel that we're here for that validation of like, yes, like who is it? Somebody posted the Stormtrooper Christmas this morning, I think it was. I literally starved my yogurt. I was like, oh, ow.
That's awesome.
Anyway, so like there's social cues, and that was actually kind of what I got a lot into, is kind of like the neuroscience of it and the sociological reasons that like we are all kind of lost in modern life a little bit. We're isolated for a lot of reasons, and we all want to connect, right? And what I didn't foresee happening was that malicious people would take
Hi, Elizabeth.
Betsy's here. Betsy's who taught me how to do makeup.
She did. Betsy is very, very good at it. She's a pretty lady. If you didn't see the picture, I'll show you again.
Yeah, that's her. Look at her. Look at her. Gorgeous. Look at her.
She's gorgeous.
I'm finally taking care of my skin better. She's taught me how to take care of my skin better and all kinds of things. Anyway, so yeah. So that was kind of, the evolution. And then I wrote a book, and then I started going on TV and talking about things and giving talks and traveling the world. And then, my depression got the best of me because like any good, New Yorker, but I think also that runs in our family. Like we definitely struggle with mental wellness stuff in our family that is often not talked about. I'll say it. And I had to take a break. I had to bow out. So, we love you too, Betsy. I miss you. It's so hard not to see you this summer.
Betsy, we're going to put that up again. Yeah. We love you too, Betsy. Thank you for tuning in. So
anyway, Dune. See, what did we say about Nerd Family? She was like, I had to go to a talk about the book Dune before I came over here.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Nerd Family. Yes. Anyway, so that was, burnout number 1 in around 2013. And then I had burnout number 2 in 2017. And here I am.
And here we are. We're at 2017. I have a question.
All right.
Being that you wrote the book, Share This, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you like you said, who could foresee anything really that was going to blow up out of any of this? Now, I want to talk something about the art of conversation. Now, with the advent of now, as the phones got smarter, as the computers got smaller, as the tablets got quicker to use,
mm-hmm.
and the children who pick up this the way to use them now, like at 1 or 2 years old, is absolutely mind blowing.
Yeah.
That being said, I notice a lot of people I talk to, a lot of people who I know are like, when you message somebody or you're messaging them, do you notice now that like there's a lot of vowels missing and they're shortening things and they almost have their own code of talking now?
Yeah.
I'm a conversationalist. I like to talk, hence why I'm on 2 shows. And I do have my show. I have the wrestling show. We like to talk. We like the bullshit. And I think, like you said, we come from a blue collar family who all got to sit around and bullshit all the time.
Yes, there is a lot of bullshit in our family.
there certainly is, loads of it. But do you feel now, though, that the art of the conversation let's particularize it, the youth? Do you think the youths? Do you think over there? I can't. I'm not a city. I'm a Boston accent guy. I like. I heart Boston, but I love the city. The city's my second home. As you know, I was there all the time till this goddamn COVID hit, which we'll get into. Don't worry.
Okay.
Now, but do you feel now? I feel
Yeah.
bad kind of for these kids that just like the quick thing and like BRB, LOL, FWT, like they're a lot of them just sit home now. They don't.
No. So what's really interesting specifically about the language component, which from my linguistics background, I have some input on this. There's actually a book from the mid 2000s, right around that time that I was kind of coming up in the world, called Slam Dunks and No Brainers by a woman named Leslie Saven, that I highly recommend. And I interviewed her for an article. And one of the really interesting things is that literally every generation and every culture since the beginning of time thinks the young people speak terribly, because
so it's just it's my age catching up with me is all it's really doing.
It seriously is. As soon as you're like the young people don't know how to talk, that's literally what's happening. And it is this incredible cultural phenomenon. And we think, oh my gosh, like the English language is degrading in some way because people are using shortcuts in language. From a linguistics perspective, when language is all about being understood, and when you're understood and when things are mutually intelligible, that's exactly what the point of it is. And there are these rules to how people text and use social media. Like there's sometimes where you can use you are as you're, and sometimes you can't. And if you ask someone to describe what those are, chances are they couldn't tell you, but they could tell you when it's wrong.
Absolutely. Which I think probably I was getting crotchety a little bit, but I just kind of I don't want like
there are things around screens that are difficult, that make communication difficult.
It does.
And so one of the things, and this is something that I wrote about in my book, is some of the neuroscience. Getting really punchy.
Kids these days, Deanna.
Exactly.
Betsy says kids. What did Steve missed? What Steve? I missed a C. You did,
Panache.
Boss. I'm ashamed of you, boss. You missed a C.
Shame
on you.
Shame, boss Steve.
Go ahead, honey.
And yeah, the neuroscience of this is, so one of the things that's really interesting is that the way that our brains are structured is that we all know that body language and tone make a difference with how words are perceived and how a message is communicated. 100%. Like if I say to you, yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I'm like, what? You don't like it?
Oh, yeah. That's great. There's all kinds of things. But if I text you, that's great. There's a million different ways you can interpret that because it's missing, right? So the neuroscience of that is that when there's no body language to help you with this, and to the body language and the tone, this is why it doesn't happen with phone conversations, help shunt it up into your parts of your brain that are doing more emotional processing and kind of like these higher levels of processing. And without that, these brain scans have shown that text messages and text only messages go straight to your amygdala, which is your fight or flight center.
Amygdala.
Yeah. So like, how you get sometimes, like you get a text message and somebody's like, that's great. And you like, I need to beat the shit out of that person.
Yeah. I want to kick them. Hard.
Yeah. Hard. Yeah. And they're like, no, I didn't mean that. I meant that's actually great. Like good for you, whatever. It's because it's gone to your amygdala. It hasn't entered any of the, like, and your brain thinks that cheetahs are chasing you right now and that you need to get the shit out of somebody.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
You're right. You're right. You know what? As soon as you said that, you're absolutely right. Cause I get mad at like, I'm not gonna mention names because A, probably nobody would know, and B, that's not the way I am. But like, I'll get
nice shade.
Yeah, and it's like I'll get these messages, and it's like somebody will be reaching out, like, what do you think? Blah blah blah, so and so, da 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 da. And I'll be like, well, I try to tone it because you never can, like you're saying, you can't get the tone in a message. You can't get the tone. But I figured out a kind of a way. I have my own way of talking. I guess everybody does on the text. Yeah. They have their own phonetic, the way they write out their text messages or however. So I try to include that in what I do as gentle as I can.
Yeah.
And every fucking time it backfires. And they're like, what? Jesus Christ. Blah, blah. Then you got to call them and you got to be like, no, I meant this. And they're like, oh, because, they got them all fired up, and here I am. I'm ready to jump out the window and it's all over nothing. You know what I mean?
And it's all over nothing. And
all over nothing.
So that's something that people who are working in augmented reality and virtual reality are actually, I know some folks that are doing some interesting, they generally kind of start out as these weird art projects, and then they turn into like, this is how we can actually kind of effectively communicate with one another through digital means. And I'm also working for another client who does early childhood development, and they've done some really interesting studies about screens. Like, is screen time bad for your child? Is it like giving your child Fruit Loops for dinner every night when you hand them a screen? And, because people really worry about these things and whatever. And it's like, no, but they've shown that there's these, there's all kinds of things that make for a meaningful experience in interactivity for very young kids. Totally. Also, Steve says in the comments, I'm the same way. He says, I'm a texter. I hate talking on the phone. Here I am doing all these shows. Feel you so hard.
Steve, you are such a multifaceted, dimensional, complicated.
But, there are things, there's things that people have studied too, and I'm trying to think of what I've read about this, but I may be totally making this up, is what I'm saying.
Did you see Boston Loves Me Back?
Of course it does.
Oh my God.
Betsy represents Boston. She was the first. Betsy was the first of our family to pioneer out to Boston. She was who planted the flag out there. She did. Yeah.
My love just grew even more for her.
Right. Like, just when you thought you couldn't love Betsy more.
Just when you thought you couldn't. Now there's like, forget it. I got Southie, Dorchester, Somerville, Charlestown. I got everywhere to go now. This is great. This is great. So yeah.
Oh, but there's a hypothesis that one of the reasons that some of us hate talking on the phone is because it does require more kind of emotional labor. It requires more emotional processing. It's more tiring because you are using these higher parts of your brain to process the emotions of what the other person is doing. Oh, Kathy was there before you. Oops. Sorry, I always thought you were first.
Let's just pretend you were.
Pretend you were. Don't tell Kathy. Don't tell Kathy and Jack. Anyway, so there's a lot of reasons, and there was a really interesting study during the pandemic that came out of like why are we all so tired during this pandemic? Like, why are we all just exhausted all the time? One of the reasons is because many of us who have white collar jobs are on Zoom all day, and in meetings all day. And it is actually really, really exhausting for our brains to look at ourselves and listen to other people, because we're completely focused on both experiences, and it's not something that happens in real life. And so our brains are actually just like constantly overloaded, and we just want to nap all the time. So Zoom fatigue is real.
That's interesting.
Is it crazy?
That's really cool. I would have never. Yeah, these are things that like I myself and probably a lot of my audience never would have, taken into consideration.
Who knew?
Can you believe, everybody, that you're learning something on my show? It's not just full of jokes and me referencing girls and stuff. Like everybody, we went off the rails the other night, Deanna.
I'm shocked.
On the wrestling show, we always do. We have a great time. All the guys are great. But we're actually
amazing.
Thank you. We appreciate that. And we're going to have a special guest who's actually a girl wrestler. And she also has a side gig where she calls out pedophiles online, which is really cool. And yeah, she's a female wrestler and a pedophile hunter. So that's how can you miss that? So she's actually going to be signing with a big company, and she is agreed to be on our show.
Amazing.
That's going to be really cool. That's going to be really cool.
He also, my friend Corey has the, who I introduced you to, my friend Corey Ryan Forrester is a comedian. He has an alter ego that's a wrestler called Buttercream Dream.
What?
Yeah. So y'all got to get Corey on.
We'll have to
get Corey on.
Corey, come on the show.
Ryan Forrester is one of the best comedians working today. So there you go.
We open invite. You're invited. You're on.
I'll hook it up, Corey.
Hook it up. Now you brought up a good point about like our blue collar upbringing. Now, a lot of people that lived in this area of upstate New York had the blue collar upbringing, the depressive like surrounding life, to where it almost seemed like there was no future, and unless you broke, you had to kind of have that courage to like break through it. You know what I mean? Now, when you were growing up, what got you like what were the things like? Since we're a pop culture. We're a pop culture website. We're a pop culture network. Let's dive into your tastes a little bit here. Now, what was the music that you liked when you were growing up? What were you? We gotta hear this. We gotta hear.
And it's a good thing that Betsy is here, because she was actually a huge influence on me growing up, because they would come visit and we would visit them all the time, and she was just so freaking cool. She always looked cool, and she was always like really fun and like interesting, and she's always been that person for me. So I was like,
dare I say exotic a little bit?
A little exotic, yeah.
For being like coming where she was from here, it was like, whoa. I mean, she would turn heads and she would make that was for real.
And so, she was definitely a big influence. But pop culture wise, I remember being 9 years old and falling completely in love with Madonna. I loved her music. I loved how she looked. I wanted to be her when she grew up. And I remember, if y'all know my mom, some of you know my mom. But she's basically like me, but like looks really mainstream. Like that's who my mom is. And so I remember being 9 and I asked for Like a Virgin for Christmas on my Christmas list. And my mom goes, and she comes into my bedroom and she sits down with me on the bed and she goes, "Do you know what this means?" And I literally didn't. I had no idea, like completely innocent.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know. I love Madonna. I think she's so cool. And my mom was like, great. And I totally got it for Christmas.
Oh, that's so awesome. Yeah. That's so Aunt Rachel too. That's great. That is great. So Madonna, I like Madonna.
That's it wasn't because she was, Prince was another one, like just like people who bent things, like people who
totally.
Because like I like to tell people also where we grew up, like kind of punk rock never really penetrated. Like metal was our punk rock, by the time I was like in high school and kind of stuff like that, like hair metal and
the ballad
like
hair metal,
metal, like old school, like 70s rock metal, Ozzy, all of that stuff. Like I knew that I wanted to be different, but through most of my teenage life until I left town, basically, I wanted nothing more than to just conform and not be seen.
Wow.
I know. And
but
it can, because things manifest in these different ways. And when you grow up in places like where we grew up, being different is really hard. I knew people who were different, and I knew people who got, not physically the shit kicked out of them, but emotionally the shit kicked out of them. I did a few times, but not as bad as a lot of other people.
Same here. Same
here. And so like, I was just like, I longed for these kind of different things and like just being expressive and being, this different person, but I didn't get to try any of it even really until I left. And I was an exchange student. I left and I went to Germany when I was 17.
Wow. 17, you went abroad.
Yeah.
What was that like? Did it freak you out? Like, and was the wall still up? No, we were older when the wall.
It had just come down.
So like before. The apprehension was still kind of in the air, but it was looser.
But it was, and going there, one of the things that happened again, culturally, was all of a sudden I realized like all of the things that had been kind of piled onto me culturally and personality wise didn't actually apply. Like I could actually choose the things that I wanted to identify with because I didn't have this legacy of my whole family is from here. My brother went to this school. We've lived here for forever. I've lived in the same house since I've grown up. You know, I've had the same friends since I was a little kid. Like all of those things were removed from me. And all of a sudden I was faced with these choices and it was really confusing and hard. But like, I totally chose punk rock and communism, you know, and I came back and I was like, again, to the horror of my dad.
Oh God. Yeah. You know, the Zantmen, they're very conservative, you know, bless their hearts.
What'd you do with and I was like, there's this dude called Karl Marx because I'm 18 and I'm like, think I know everything. Right.
That's
anyway, so yeah, but I mean, I think that, and you know, we hear a lot about this. I mean, I hear a lot of this, especially from my queer friends, about growing up in these small places where you cannot out yourself, right? And certainly my identity was much less dangerous in a lot of ways for me. It was not physically dangerous to me, except as a woman and getting, you know, sexually harassed since I was 11 years old. Whatever.
That's what happened. Yeah.
Although that was a weird thing. There was this guy that that literally used to sexually harass me as a 13-year-old. He became a bartender at the bar near my parents' house.
Really?
And I saw him one time. And of course, he has no recollection of saying all of the awful things that he ever said to me, right? And he's just like, hey, Deanna, you want to, you know, what can I get you? And I'm just like, all of a sudden I'm 13 again. And I'm like sweating. And I'm like,
right.
You know, so
no, that's real. Yeah.
Anyway, so like these experiences that we have, I don't know how I don't know exactly where I was going with it, but it's just like, you know, you take these cultural things. So those, back to your original question, those were Madonna, Prince were my touchstones. The Muppets actually were a big inspiration for me.
I love the Muppets.
Because you watch the original Muppet movie, and that is all about live your authentic self, find your dream, and do it. Right. Yeah. And I was like, check, doing it.
Bam. I'm in.
So
we have some cool comments here, Deanna. Let's see.
Yeah, I appreciate Tim's comment here too.
So, yes, he likes Madonna. My car DJ decided to have a Madonna. Yeah, I did. See what Stephanie's talking about. Stephanie's my best mate. She's her and I are one of my best friends.
Hey,
probably the closest I have. Definitely closest girl.
How have I not met this person?
Steph's on the go. And she won't deny it. She is all over the place. She's on the go. Her boyfriend lives in Pennsylvania, so she goes to see him. Her daughter goes to college in PA. She goes to see her and picks her up. And coincidentally, that's what she's talking about because I go accompany her. Because, you know, it's at night and some of it's back roads and, you know, I don't want her to be driving alone. And
because you're that guy. You're our bodyguard.
Yeah, I got to take care of my peeps, man. So, and plus there's a Tim Hortons on the way.
And the truth comes out.
So I decided that, that like, you know, because she has Napster, I think, or whatever. And there's like, you can literally download any fucking song you want and listen to it. So I'm like, you know what? Like, I think I'm just going to like turn it into like a DJ ride. So so one day I do on one way down, I do a Madonna, and one way back, I'll do like a disco dance party and we'll be dancing. And another one, I'll do like soft rock. Another one, we'll do metal. And it's like, we have such a good time, Steph and I.
I'm interested to hear, what were your cultural touchstones growing up where we grew up? Like, what were the things that kind of like, that grabbed you, that pulled you in?
Well, obviously wrestling, you know, I fell in love with that early. And
my dad and I went to the one at the Broome County Arena when Hulk Hogan came.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. You actually went?
Oh, yeah.
Sweet.
We were into it. Yeah.
That's
anyway,
awesome.
Go ahead. Back to you. Obviously wrestling. But like, what were the kinds of, like, what music did, or like movies and stuff?
So I you know, being the youngest and, you know, when you're forced to go, like with your parents shopping and stuff, it's like Bev liked WMRV and they played like the light rock. So I got to hear, but it was in a pivotal time where all these cool 80s bands and songs like the light rock contemporary bands were playing, like, you know, Men at Work, Hall & Oates, which I'm a huge fan of Hall & Oates. Everybody knows
that. Oh my God, yeah.
So I got to like,
come true.
Oh my God, it's so great.
Yeah.
So I got all that ingrained as I'm growing up. And then I'm like, you know, I get a little older and like I'm in the mall with my friends or whatever, like I'm 12. I might have met with a friend's mom or whatever, my friend and his mom, and we're hanging out, like I think the Tape World or something like that. And yes. I see the cover of
Aladdin's Castle.
Yeah, Aladdin's Castle. Remember that?
The video games?
Holy shit, the video games. But I saw the cover of Master of Puppets, and I'm like,
oh, yeah.
I'm like, that's cool. So I picked that up. But before that, and I have to say this, I got to give a shout out to my brother, because if it wasn't for him, I would not have been involved with this kind of stuff. Probably I would have discovered it. But Mike had Kiss, because Mike, he was a teenager in the 70s.
Yeah.
Mike had a gigantic Kiss poster as big as the door on his wall. And whenever I came, I wasn't allowed to come in his room unless he'd point. I go, Ace Frehley. He'd point again. Gene Simmons. He'd point again. Paul Stanley. He'd point again. Peter Criss. So then I could come in the room. And then he would listen to Black Sabbath. And when I heard Black Sabbath, my life changed. And I was like, this is what I want out of life. I want to feel like this right now.
Exactly that feeling. I mean, I like, again, going back to like some of the stuff that we were talking about earlier with social media, with any media, it's like we are looking for ourselves. We are looking to identify with one another and to have that feeling of this is where I belong. Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
And you know, that's getting twisted now in a lot of ways, but it's so, I mean, like I talk now, you know, like a lot of my friends are, you know, super knowledgeable about punk rock. I did not know about punk rock until college. Really, like I knew some of the songs, but I didn't know any of the like.
You weren't
culture
savvy with
and like who people were and kind of all of this stuff.
I'm interested to what groups in that genre you like. Like drop a couple names that the punk groups that you like.
Oh man, Misfits, New
World
Order,
one of my
favorite. God, now of course I'm like drawing a total blank. Again, it was never like a my God, Dead Kennedys.
They're one of the greatest. One of the greatest.
And that was actually part of my exchange student experience was actually like identifying with people. That's New Kids on the Block. That's how I felt too.
I like New Kids on the Block. I'm going to throw it out into the universe. You know, I'm sorry, everybody, but I do.
No, you got to bring him on. You're going to have him on as a guest, talk about this.
But we will. We'll have to.
Bad Brains. Oh my God. So Bad Brains.
Boom.
I met, oh God, what's his name? The singer from Bad Brains. And I'm totally drawing a middle-aged blank right now.
And I just saw a thing on Bad Brains.
Come on, Artie.
Article on him. Artie, who's the lead singer?
Drop it in there. Drop it in there, Artie.
Is Eric Bergman in the house? Because he would know the lead singer of Bad Brains. Eric Bergman's going to be a guest, and he knows a lot about music too.
Of course. Oh my gosh, I can't believe
the Ramones are great stuff. Of course they are.
These names. Anyway, but yeah, like those were things that didn't come to me until kind of much later. I didn't realize that I was looking for alternative things, but totally metal. Like I had a very similar experience with my brother where he was bringing home Metallica albums and I was just like,
oh,
it was weird because I would basically, I mean, I don't know if you were similar with your brother, but with my brother, I would just basically want to do whatever he was doing, no matter what, like whatever you're doing, I'm doing. And he was like, don't do that. Go away. Because I'm 4 years younger and I'm a girl, right? In any case, but like with his music taste, at the same time that he was bringing home Metallica albums, he was also playing jazz piano and bringing home tons of jazz. And I was learning about like Black jazz culture and, you know, being like 13 and 14 years old in the middle of central New York, learning about these cultures. And so, it's like this kind of crazy, like he's a musical genius anyway.
Really
and Mike was talking about how he loved Mike's Kiss albums from that same era, from that picture of you and I on Facebook.
Thank you, Align. Align's my man. Align
What's
is
up, Align?
he's wow, what a beauty. He and Dave now. I got us. Dave made a comment earlier too, so we have to. David and Align are actually going on tonight after us. They're on the Four Quarters show, and Align. The guys like to pick on me that I have a man crush on Align, which I'm not going to deny that he's a handsome.
I mean, I'm looking at his profile picture, and
that's David and Align. But Align's gorgeous, man. There's no getting around that. He's actually a beautiful human being too. So thank you,
David
Align.
looks pretty good too. So I'm just saying.
HR is. Oh, we got an answer, Deanna. HR is the singer.
Yes, I met them at a rally to save CBGBs. A friend of mine, so a friend of mine was organizing this rally, and he was like, listen, I'm organizing this like kind of concert rally in Washington Square Park, and this is like maybe 2005, 2006. And I had been working on anti-gentrification efforts in the Lower East Side at that time. And he said, I'd really love to have like a local activist person. Do you want to come talk to this crowd? And I was like, sure, whatever. Not knowing what I was getting myself into. And so I get out the subway and I'm walking up to Washington Square Park, and like streets are blocked off. And then there's like police everywhere. And then there's like security. Wow. And I'm like walking around, and I'm like, and finally I'm just started asking people, I'm like, I'm supposed to talk at this? And there's Washington Square Park is like full. It's got like 10,000 people in it.
No.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And so my friend Scott comes up and he's like, hey, what's up? Great. I'm so glad you're here. So I'm going to put you on after Debbie Harry. And I'm like,
Debbie Harry? Yeah. Sorry.
I met HR from Bad Brains. I met B-52s. Like it was all these people that were coming out for CBGBs at the time. Yeah. And it was Chuck D. I was like,
oh, Chuck D.
Which again, hip hop was another thing. Like because of where we grew up, was very white. It was very not acceptable.
No, it was very taboo. Like they were very frowned upon. And that's weird. I don't know. To me, it's weird.
It was. I remember it being. I remember hip hop being. It's not music because they're speaking. And like it being this thing, and so it was much later that then I was like started getting into like Public Enemy and hip hop as a social justice tool, and hip hop, which really was its original concept, was people rapping in the streets about all the shit that was happening to them. Again, storytelling, right? Telling good stories. This is folk art, and
it is folk art. It's storytelling. It's storytelling at its great. I mean, you got to have a mega talent to really do that. Like,
yeah. And incredible poetry, incredible artistry. When you watch, remember, Def Jam on HBO. Yeah.
Oh, Steph remembers the B-52s ride.
Yeah.
Artie's on Fight the Power.
Oh, Fight the Power. I know. So it really, like, again, it was all of these experiences that kind of like broke through this kind of mold of like, this is where you grew up and this is who you are.
Yeah.
And it's like, I knew I wasn't really that, but I didn't know what I was until I came out into the world and had these experiences. Cousin Betsy is saying she loves the B-52s. I'm going to send you later the picture that I have with Fred from the B-52s, because I look completely insane because I'm so excited. I'm like,
that's so great. That's so great. I'm a giant Kate Pearson fan. She's gorgeous.
Yeah.
She's absolutely gorgeous. I want to take her to the
prom. That she has ties to upstate New York now.
She does. She has a campground. I think it's to the west of here, east of here, and up like in this. I don't know if it's Schoharie, not Schoharie, okay. Dutchess County. It's up in that Woodstock area. Mm-hmm. Maybe Big Indian down mm-hmm. through that area. He's absolutely right. And yeah, I want to take her to the prom. My God,
Betsy, this is what we're doing when we have a family reunion again. Is we're going to drive over there.
Yeah, we're gonna go, and we're all gonna get a bungalow, and we're gonna hang out with Kate Pearson.
Yo, man, that is my dream.
And I'll even do the lead on Shiny Happy People if everybody wants to join in.
R.E.M.,
We'll have a
honey.
giant sing along. Yeah,
it's R.E.M. I know she sang on it.
She sang on it.
I'll do Love Shack.
Love Shack's great. B-52s are great.
I mean, Rock Lobster, like that, again, not a song that I knew when it came out. It was much later, like when I was in Germany and people were, celebrating these like kind of punk indie origins that I didn't know
way
about.
Underground. Yeah, they were.
Yeah.
I keep hitting my table.
Oh, Hotel with her life partner.
Noted. Yeah, she they have like I saw a little snippet on it. They have like it's kind of like a campground, but it has like home, like, cabins, and you can stay there and stuff. It's really cool.
That's and it's funny because people have these perceptions, again, culturally, of upstate New York, right? Like where I am, a lot of people are like, Hudson, the town of Hudson, like the town of Hudson, and like how precious it is. And I'm like, oh, that's not where I'm from.
That ain't where I'm from.
And actually, if you look at anthropological maps of dialect, housing styles, and kind of a couple of other things, our region actually has much more in common with Appalachia than it does the Hudson Valley or other parts of New York State, which makes so much sense to me.
It's crazy that so parallel. One thing that doesn't have a connection though is the accent. Now we have we have the northern vowel shift,
which I also love that you went accent.
Accent. Yeah, we have it. We have that. That's prevalent up here, and it gets heavier as you get west, like go to Binghamton, and as you go a little northwest to Syracuse and Rochester. It's like that Rust Belt kind of thing from like Wisconsin to Binghamton. Basically, that was like the working class area of the country,
of the whole. We were part of that factory, industrial, rural landscape, and and it's really funny too. My brother and I talk about the accent a lot because my brother's accent, he was in the military for 10 years and has lived in the South for a long time, and he has that sort of amalgamated military accent that's just like all different American accents like mixed into one.
He's got a cool one then.
Yeah, and he's got a really deep voice, so he
does have a really deep voice,
like
he does. A little bit, yeah.
Wait, put up what Betsy just said, man.
Let's see.
So dig this.
Oh boy.
We did. So another cousins of ours, Cheryl and Sarah, and I used to run around our family reunion and with Uncle Charlie's video camera, and we would interview people. And one year I was always the host because I'm the Leo and I demand attention. And we were interviewing people about their accents. And what Betsy is talking about here is our cousin Jan, who now lives in San Antonio, I think, but Southern Texas.
Texas somewhere.
From Minnesota. So on the tape, and we have it somewhere, somebody needs to digitize this because I interviewed her and I said, hey, where are you from? And tell us about your accent. And she went, I'm from Minnesota. I don't have an accent. We were like,
which they have one of the most pronounced accents in the country.
Yeah. And my brother can do the Binghamton accent perfectly. Like I wish he were around right now that we could like bring him on just to have him do it, because it's this weird thing. I actually have a client that I used to work with who was also from Central New York, Southern Tier area growing up. And we would have calls together and we would both start out like, she's in DC and I'm in New York, and we would start out in our regular work voices. And by the end, we're like, all right, so what do you want to, what do you want to do about those action items? I don't know, and we're, this is the thing that my brother and I talk about is the yes, colloquial yes noise of Central New York is not yup with a P in the front. It's a yup.
with a T.
No, in the back of the throat. Yep.
Yup.
Yep.
You're right.
Anyway.
Without getting too. Oh boy.
I know. I was gonna say I'm getting weedy here. I'm getting weedy, and y'all got another show. I know.
You're not. I was gonna bring something up. I'm probably gonna catch hell for this, but we have relatives that live very, very rurally. Uncle Hans and Helen, they're beautiful people.
I love that you called them rural.
Well, I'm trying to be nice. They live out in the sticks in the middle of nowhere. And
Walton, man. I got a friend that's got a cabin out there.
Yeah. And
he
like
full time now.
That's like, there's almost like a life of their own out there too. Like that's how, and I'm not saying this to be offensive.
No. But this is the thing of like, and also those, like the names of the roads out there, like Mormon Hollow Road, right?
Mormon Hollow, Dry Brook.
Holler. That's when you hear Southern people talking about the holler. That's the holler. It's the same
That's the holler.
Yeah.
And they're just, they have their own like way of life, their own language, their own community. And like, it was fun to make fun of for years. But when you really look at it now, like now that I'm kind of smart-ish at all.
You are much smarter than you give yourself credit for. So probably. So there. I know you. I've known you for 45 years.
For 45 years over here.
Here.
But it's so neat, like looking at the cultural differences of every area that we have around here. And it's like, overlooked a little bit, but I just think it's really interesting.
And that's what, I mean, that makes up all of what we're talking about, back to the political stuff too, and the activist stuff is like these really gorgeous, close-knit community cultures that we can be part of. And that's the thing that disappoints me so much about modern politics, is that that's so ignored and so left behind.
It is by either side or whatever three sides they're arguing about.
All right, Tim.
He doesn't have an accent. He talk funny. Yeah, you talk.
No,
funny.
He talks funny.
You talk funny. I've lost my ability to do the New York accent because I do the Boston one so much because. The guys, we have a thing where they pick on me and I do it all the time. I pretend I'm from Boston and I hey kid, hey, park that car. I do that all the time. And so I'm like and I like the Red Sox and I like the Celtics. I know. I'm a Boston fan. And so we have fun with that. I know you're going to jump out the window. I know it's, but yeah, it's, no, that's really cool. Yeah. We're getting close on time. Let's do a couple of rapid fire things here, Deanna.
All right. I'm ready.
Find some cool things about you. Let's do it. Care Bears or Rainbow Bright?
Oh shit! Why you got to play that? Oh,
it's just what I do.
I'm gonna go Care Bears. Care Bears.
Okay, Care Bears. Okay. G.I. Joe or Transformers?
Oh Jesus! Transformers.
You can say Jesus Christ. You can say that.
Yeah. No, not if my mom's watching.
Judas Priest. Oh, boo. Come on, Steph. Okay. So.
Unpopular opinions with Deanna Dan. It's my new show.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. How about Charles in Charge or Family Matters?
Family Matters.
Family Matters. Okay.
Charles in Charge can suck some things.
Charlie, he can. I have the DX shirt, so we know what Charles can do.
Yeah.
Okay. Saturday Night Live, yay or nay?
Old Saturday Night Live. Although some of the current ones, who I really love is Kate McKinnon. Kate McKinnon is brilliant. She's
really funny.
Brilliant. Like I really love her. And it has gotten a lot better.
It slid from the early 2000s till probably even like the early teens 2000s. Is that right? Is that how you say that? Teens?
I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know either. It's Christ.
I guess the early. Christ.
Oh, you remember that? Remember back in the early.
You're getting me trouble with my mom.
I know. Rachel, she's gonna smack me when she.
I was gonna say next time she comes to Big M, she's gonna be like,
How many times did you curse, young man?
Oh yeah.
Well, Rachel, I don't remember that, but
I did a radio show once where I ended up getting bleeped out a lot because the part that they used from the interview was originally not supposed to be part of the interview, and I was dropping a lot of F-bombs. And
that's awesome,
my mom listened to it, told me the next day. She was like, well, it's weird because your tape, like everybody else's tape seemed like fine, but like yours tape like seemed to have like a lot of extra like like beeping sounds in it. So my mom's a jerk.
Oh, that's so great. Oh boy, well, we have some sad news here. We have some really sad news. David, Tom Tiny Lister, aka Zeus, passed away. Well, R.I.P. Zeus. He was in Friday.
Yeah.
And he was in the WWF and WCW. Well-known pop culture figure. He great guy. Oh man, R.I.P. Man.
God bless. God bless him.
Sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry about that.
Holding space for that. Space for that.
That's terrible. Friday was a great movie too. Only seen it twice. I mean, a lot of people have it on their like repeat list. But yeah. So anyway, so Deanna.
Yeah,
we're probably at the end of our rope here.
All right. I think they're all at the end of their rope too.
I think everybody's had a good time, man. We're getting a lot of positive. We got a lot of positive stuff out of this, and I've been getting a lot of messages. My phone's been blowing up the whole time.
Nice.
I'm sure Steve Faraci's still answering emails because he's still answering from last week's show.
Yeah.
So that's how good we go over here.
God bless them in the PCP crew, man. Y'all are so great, and I just have such a great time be a part of this community. So thank you.
We're grateful and thankful that you came onto the show here today. We're really happy.
Thank you for inviting me, and I love you, but I also just think that you're a brilliant human, but also a really great talk show host. I'm so glad you're doing this.
Thank you very much. I do my best. And now a word from our sponsor. Actually, a word from the sponsor is coming up right after this show. You're going to see the Four Quarters show. Carter's. I said Carter's. You got me in the Binghamton accent. I said Carter's. I get Carter's for the laundromat.
Yeah, Carter's.
The Four Quarters show is coming up with a line. Sorry, hold on. With a line and David. And the previous show was obviously the Giant show. But please tune into a line. Please tune into my buddy David, who's also my co-host on the Just Too Sweet show. Everybody, thank Deanna. Deanna, thank you.
All.
Everybody, we had such a good time here. Deanna, will you do us the pleasure of coming back again? Will you do us the pleasure?
Yeah. Sure. Whenever you want.
Of course I will.
Of course I will.
Of course I will. I had a great time, Deanna. Thank you, man. I love you so much.
I love you too.
One of my absolute favorite people.
You're one of my favorite people too. What a coincidence.
You know what? Isn't it just weird how things just happen? Funny that.
It's funny.
So I'm going to sign off from Eric on behalf of Deanna. Thank you for tuning into the A to Z program. We are going to see you next time right here. Same channel, same place. Tune in, listen, laugh, and most of all, love people. Love. Good night.
Good night.